My mother laughed at me in front of my entire family. Not a small laugh, a real one, warm and genuine, like I had said something genuinely funny. Then she looked at me with soft eyes and said, "The money doesn't matter, sweetheart. You'll never be what Michael is. But we love you anyway." I put my fork down on the table. Slowly, carefully. The way you set something down when your hands are shaking and you don't want anyone to know. 15 years of dinners. 15 years of swallowed sentences and careful smiles and being the daughter who never made trouble. And in that one moment, sitting under the same chandelier that had always hung too low over that table, next to the same framed photograph of my brother in his white coat that had always watched over us like a saint's portrait, something inside me quietly, permanently, stopped. I am Beverly Goodwin. I'm a chief financial officer. I have closed deals worth $18 million, restructured failing companies, and testified before regulatory boards without my voice shaking once. And I had been sending $3,000 a month to my parents for 5 years without telling a single person. Not to impress anyone. Not to be thanked. Because they were my parents, and because that's what you do when you love people who cannot fully love you back, and you've convinced yourself that the distance between what you give and what you receive is just the shape that family takes. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined sitting there in that dining room with the gravy cooling and my mother still half smiling, was that not 1 cent of that money had ever reached them. Not one. Let me take you back to that Sunday in October. My mother had made the same stew she'd made every October Sunday since I was 12. Same carrots. Same pearl onions she burned in the pan until they blistered gold. Same cloth napkins with the blackberry stains she refused to replace because she said they had character. The word she used for things she'd stopped trying to fix. I had flown in from Boston that morning. I hadn't wanted to. I had reserved a hotel room the night before in a kind of quiet panic because I already knew, in the way your body knows things before your mind will admit them, that sleeping in my childhood home would require something from me I was no longer sure I had. My brother Michael was at the table talking about a donation. $50,000, he said, given personally to the pediatric cardiology program at his hospital. My father nodded the way he nodded when he'd been waiting to hear exactly that kind of news. Like the world was clicking into place. I mentioned, lightly, carefully, that my company had just finalized an $18 million commitment for a cardiac pavilion in the same state. My mother laughed. Then she said it. "Money isn't the same as saving lives, sweetheart. You'll never be what Michael is. But we love you anyway." Michael smiled the smile he used in hospital hallways. "Mom, be nice." I put down my fork. 15 years of Christmas dinners and birthday calls and thank you notes for gifts that were never quite right came out in one clean sentence. "Then tell him to pay the bills, Mom. I'm done sending money." My mother blinked twice. And then, and this is the thing I still think about, the thing that changed everything, she said something so honest it made the whole room shift. "What money, Beverly? We've never received a single cent from you." She wasn't performing. My mother is the worst liar in our family. She's the kind of woman whose face tells the truth 3 seconds before her mouth opens. There was no flicker, no hesitation, no micro-expression of guilt. She simply said it and waited for me to explain. I drove back to Boston with the radio off. 3 hours on a gray October highway with nothing but math in my head. $3,000 a month. 60 months. $180,000. Not with my mother. Not with my father. Gone somewhere. I stopped at a rest area somewhere in western Massachusetts around 10 o'clock at night. Stood under a yellow light by a vending machine and did the arithmetic again. Same answer. $180,000 missing. I stood there long enough that a teenager in a hoodie asked if I was okay. "I'm fine," I said. "Just counting." I drove the rest of the way, without music. By the time I crossed back into the city, I had the first piece of a plan. Not the whole thing. Just the first move. I'm a CFO. I don't panic about money. I find out where it went. My mother had been collecting my brother's accomplishments the way some women collect commemorative porcelain plates. Each one hung with care. Each one polished weekly. Never enough to fill the wall, which meant she always needed more. When I was 8 years old, I ran home with a perfect math test. I burst into the kitchen, holding it like a flag. My mother looked at the paper, then looked at me, and said, "Oh, how nice. Michael must have helped you with that." Michael was 12 and watching cartoons in the living room. He hadn't helped me with anything in his life. That was the entire system explained to me on a kitchen counter before I was old enough to understand what I was being taught. My brother was the brilliant one. I was the reliable one. My parents pulled every dollar from their savings to send Michael to medical school. They pulled exactly nothing to send me to business school. I took out loans. I paid them off alone in 6 years in a one-room apartment at a desk by the window, and I never mentioned it once at a Christmas dinner. When Michael finished his residency, my mother stood up at the parish social and announced to the whole congregation, "We finally have a doctor. Our family finally has a doctor." People applauded. Someone hugged her. When I graduated with my MBA, my mother sent flowers to my apartment with a card that said, "So proud of you, sweetheart. Will we see you at Christmas?" I stopped waiting for her to be proud of me by the time I was 30. I stopped waiting for her to see me by the time I was 35. And then, standing under a fluorescent light at a highway rest stop at 10 o'clock at night, I finally started to understand what had been happening instead. The second piece came from my closest friend in business, Elena Bond. She runs the oversight committee for a regional hospital foundation in Ohio. We met 9 years ago at a philanthropy conference, both of us fleeing a man who wanted to talk about tax exemptions. We've been friends ever since. I called her about something unrelated, a grant structure question. We solved it in 4 minutes. Then she said, casually, like she was commenting on the weather, "By the way, that Fairmont Regional Gala, they want you to speak. Your company is the lead donor. And Michael's being recognized too. Parallel donations, apparently. Very clever on his part." I let a beat pass. Parallel donations. "Yes," she said. "His personal contribution runs alongside your company's commitment. The $50,000 is going to look great for his name on the pavilion." I held the phone very still. $50,000. From the same brother who had called me at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night 2 years earlier to ask if I could cover our father's knee replacement copay because he was waiting on his next paycheck. The copay had been $600. I hung up, opened my laptop, pulled up the joint account my mother and I had set up years ago, the one I'd been depositing into every first of the month, the one whose login I'd chosen, whose password my mother had never once changed and apparently never once used. 5 years of statements. I read them once, then again. Then I put the laptop down and stood at my kitchen window, watching the river go dark. The next morning, I went downstairs to Marcus Webb's office. Marcus is our compliance officer. He's been at the firm longer than I have. He's 60, bald, gentle, and he is the single most terrifying person I know to anyone who has ever tried to run something illicit through a charitable vehicle. I closed his door and sat down. "Marcus, I need to open a file." He waited. That's Marcus's method. He lets you say it yourself. "I need a compliance audit on 2 points. First, 5 years of personal transfers from my private account into a joint account in Ohio. The joint account is in my parents' names. My brother is the authorized signatory. Second, donor records at Fairmont Regional Medical Center. Any parallel donation commitment attributed to Dr. Michael Goodwin in connection with our company's pavilion commitment." Marcus set down his tea. "Beverly, your brother is a related party. This is a conflict of interest." "I know. I want it on record." "Did you understand what happens if there's a finding?" "I understand." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he picked up his legal pad. "I'll register tonight. 3 weeks to complete. Do you want legal notified?" "Notify them. I want a paper trail on this case that could be read aloud in a courtroom." I had spent 15 years keeping my family away from my professional letterhead. I was about to do the opposite. There is a kind of courage that doesn't look like courage. It looks like a woman sitting in a compliance officer's office, writing her own brother's name on a form and asking for a full audit. That was the day I stopped being a sister and started being a CFO. 3 weeks later, Marcus sent me the preliminary audit at 9:47 on a Thursday night. I was sitting on my couch with a glass of wine I hadn't touched. The windows behind me faced the river. The water was black. A rowing shell slid past. a single red light at its stern. I opened the attachment. 5 years of transfer records from the joint account. $10,000 entering. The same amount leaving, to a sports betting platform, each withdrawal timed within the same week as my deposits. 187 separate transactions. $94,000 total. A cryptocurrency exchange from 2021 through late 2023. $38,000. Every cent lost. My brother's personal bank account showed $48,000 in small, consistent deposits. 0 routed to my mother. 0 to my father. 0 to any vendor connected to the new roof I'd paid for, the copay I'd covered, the ophthalmologist appointment, the insulin. Nothing. I read the report 3 times. I didn't need a 4th. My brother hadn't stolen from me. He had stolen through me. I was the conduit. My parents were the excuse.
He was the drain.
I closed the laptop. Finished the glass. Then I called a woman I had met once, very briefly, at a wedding. My brother's wife, Lauren. I had never said a complete sentence to Lauren before the morning I found her in the coffee station of a convention hotel in another city. She had caramel brown hair, a gray blazer fitted exactly the way a blazer gets when someone sends it to a tailor, which she had because she was a tax attorney with a partner track and she understood how a blazer was supposed to fit. She turned around and looked at me. You're Michael's sister. I'm Lauren, his wife. A pause. I've been trying to find you. She gave me 10 minutes. We sat on a bench in the corridor, and she didn't waste a word. First, she was filing for divorce. She had discovered unauthorized withdrawals from their home equity line of credit. $74,000 across 18 months. Second, she believed Michael had a gambling addiction. Sports betting, primarily. An offshore platform registered overseas. Third, you've been sending money to your parents, haven't you? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I found a transfer log, she said. $3,000 a month coming in and the same amount leaving to that betting site within the same week. I didn't know if it was your money or if he was stealing from someone else. I'm sorry. There is a particular kind of solidarity between women who have been deceived by the same man. It doesn't require small talk. It goes straight to trust. Lauren handed me her card. When you're ready, I have copies. I put her card in my wallet next to my ID. It's still there. The gala invitation arrived on a Friday morning in a cream envelope wrapped in tissue paper. The cardstock was so thick it made a click when I set it on the kitchen counter. The program listed the Goodwin Cardiac Pavilion, my company's commitment, as the lead donation. Beneath it, in the secondary honors category, Dr. Michael Goodwin, MD, parallel donation partner. Personal commitment, $250,000. There was a small photograph beside his name. White coat, stethoscope, the hallway smile. He had submitted that photograph himself. He had nominated himself as a parallel donation partner. Because when I pulled our internal records, there was no commitment from Michael Goodwin of any kind. The foundation's records were based entirely on his own declaration, typed on hospital letterhead, signed by him, dated 4 weeks prior. A fraudulent pledge. Printed on paper, so heavy I could feel the lie in my hands. I emailed Marcus one line. Please confirm in writing that no donation commitment from Michael Goodwin exists in our records. He replied in 12 minutes.
Confirmed.
On letterhead.
Permanently.
I chose the gala deliberately. I had 3 other options. I could have called Michael privately, but I tried that years ago with a smaller version of the same question, and he denied it without blinking. I could have gone to federal authorities. Wire fraud is a federal matter, and they would have taken my call, but I didn't want the state to be the one to tell my mother the truth. I wanted to be the one to tell her. I could have called the foundation director and had his name quietly removed, and the evening would have continued with a small printed correction, and no one in that room of 300 people would ever have known my name. None of those paths gave my parents the truth. None of them gave me the record. And none of them answered the question I'd been carrying since I was 8 years old. If the evidence was in front of her, in front of witnesses, could my mother finally see me? The night before the gala, I ironed a dress I'd owned for 4 years and only worn twice. Wool crepe, charcoal, long sleeves, a collar like a man's dress shirt. My mother had once told me it made me look like a lawyer. She hadn't meant it as a compliment. I had kept the dress. I polished my shoes. I put on my grandmother's diamond earrings, the ones she had left to me, not to my mother, because my grandmother had understood something about her own daughter that my mother had never understood about me. I didn't put on red lipstick. I didn't put on anything that could be mistaken for performance. I wasn't going to Ohio to win. I was going to Ohio to stop losing. Elena called at 6. Last chance to pull back, Bev. This follows him for life. He used my mother's signature on a joint account as cover for a betting line. I'm not the one following him. I'm the one who stopped. A long pause. Okay. See you tomorrow. I drove 12 hours alone. I don't fly into my mother's city. The airport is an hour from her house, and it takes me longer to exit the terminal than to drive 2 additional states. I drove. No music. A podcast about behavioral finance, the one I listened to when I didn't want to think about anything else. Somewhere on the highway, I thought about the piano. My mother had sold it when Michael was 14 to pay for his summer science program. She had played it every Sunday morning of my childhood, quietly after church, for maybe 20 minutes. I had never asked her why she stopped. I arrived at the hotel at 4:12 in the afternoon. Checked in. Hung the dress. Sat on the edge of the bed and drank a glass of tap water. I didn't rehearse. I had stopped rehearsing 4 days earlier. There's a point in any speech where rehearsal starts to damage it. I hadn't driven to Ohio to perform. I had driven to Ohio to say what was true. The ballroom was already full when I walked in at 6. Chandeliers burning. Napkins folded like small white birds. 300 people in formal dress. A string quartet tuning near the stage. My mother saw me first. She crossed the room, set down her glass, and said quietly, "Beverly, please. Not tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." She was wearing the dress I had sent her 2 Christmases ago. "Mom, I'm here as CFO of Goodwin Hartley. I speak at 8:15. She blinked. That same blink. Michael appeared behind her. Extended hand. Easy posture. "Let's be civilized tonight." I'm always civilized, Michael. My father was standing 3 steps back. He didn't move closer. He didn't look away. And then, slowly, without saying a word, he nodded once. The way a person nods when they are acknowledging someone's arrival not as family, but as someone who has earned the right to be in the room. It was the first time in 39 years my father had nodded at me like that. I spoke for less than 4 minutes. I didn't raise my voice. I simply raised it and let the room decide what to do with it. I laid out the facts. The joint account. The transfer records.
The audit.
The fraudulent pledge on hospital letterhead. The compliance referral. I said that my parents had not known, that they had been deceived as long as I had. I said that the Goodwin Cardiac Pavilion was real, that the Goodwin family contribution was real, and that one of us had made that contribution. The records will show which one. I closed the folder I had never opened, stepped back from the microphone. I didn't look at Michael. I looked at my mother. She was crying the way a woman cries when she finally sees something she had been asked not to look at for 30 years. The silence lasted 4 seconds. I counted. Then a woman at the back of the room began to applaud. Then another. Then a table near the front. Then slowly, entirely, the whole room. Not a roar, but the kind of applause that spreads like a slow spill. People clapping because other people were clapping, and then, in small pockets, people clapping because they had understood exactly what I had said, about whom and why. Michael was already moving toward the back doors. Walking the way a man walks when he's trying not to look like he's running. A security officer, a tall woman in black, placed there that week at Elena's quiet instruction, fell into step behind him. He didn't turn around. My father stood up when I came down the stairs. He didn't approach.
He didn't speak.
He simply stood, the way a person stands when someone they love walks into or out of a room, and they want that person to know it was noticed. It was the first time in my adult life my father had stood for me. Michael intercepted me in the corridor by the coat check. He had sweated through the back of his dress shirt. The security officer was 3 meters behind him. He didn't see her. "You've destroyed me. You've destroyed Mom." "No, Michael. You did both of those things. I just stopped helping you hide them. The hospital will pull my license. Probably. That's between you and the board. I'm your brother. You were my brother for a long time. You still are. I'm still your sister. I'm just not your conduit anymore. He opened his mouth.
Closed it.
Tried again. Bev, please. I have a daughter. You have a daughter. You have a wife. You have parents. You have a hospital that trusted you. And you used all of them. I took one breath. You used me the longest. You don't get to choose which of those debts I forgive tonight. He was shaking, not dramatically, but the way a body shakes when the adrenaline that's been running it for too long finally leaves. I walked past him. I didn't touch him. The security officer gave me a small nod as I passed. Professional to professional. Woman to woman. I kept walking. In a small room behind the stage, my mother came to find me. My father followed and closed the door. She stopped just inside it, like she'd forgotten the way back into her own life. Is it true? All of it. Every number. She looked at the folder on the table between us. She didn't open it. I said terrible things to you. That Sunday. Yes. I don't know how, she stopped. I don't know how to say it, so it counts. Mom. I kept my voice even. Not tonight. Not in this room. Tomorrow. Next month. Next year. But not here. She nodded. She reached out and touched the folder with 2 fingers, the way you check the temperature of something you're not sure you're ready to pick up. She didn't pick it up. My father took her hand. Not to comfort her. To steady her. He said, very quietly, Nancy, let's go home. They left. Elena came back in.
Press.
2 questions, no more. I'll take them in the main hall. I want it public. I want it boring. She smiled. That's my girl. I sat down. Drank the whole glass of water on the table. I hadn't realized I was thirsty. 3 weeks of audits. 6 months of knowing something was wrong. 15 years of being told I was less. It had all come down to a folder I never opened, in a room where my mother had finally stopped asking me to be convenient.
I didn't forgive her that night.
I did something better. I left the door open. The Monday after the gala was quieter than people expect those Mondays to be. The hospital's communications office issued a 2-sentence statement confirming that the parallel donation mention had been withdrawn and that the foundation was cooperating with an internal review. The word cooperating appeared twice. I noticed because I used to write press releases, and I know what it means when a word gets used twice. By the end of the week, the compliance referral had been forwarded to the state medical board. Lauren filed her divorce papers formally on Wednesday. She sent me 2 lines. It's on the record now. Thank you for the push, even though you didn't know you were giving it. I replied with one. I knew. The local paper in the town where I grew up, the one I delivered by bicycle at 12 years old, ran a 700-word front-page story on Thursday. It didn't name Michael. It used the phrase a local physician under investigation. Everyone in that town knew exactly who it meant. You don't need a name to read a story when you already know the family. On Friday, I transferred an additional $100,000 to the Goodwin Cardiac Pavilion, designated personally, in the names of Richard and Nancy Goodwin, my parents. The transfer note read, for Mom and Dad, with love from their daughter. Time-stamped.
Documented. Filed.
My mother called me on a Sunday morning. She had never called me on a Sunday before. Sundays had always belonged to Michael. Beverly. Hi, Mom. Yesterday, I went to the bank. I asked the young man at the counter to help me log in. I didn't fill the silence. I saw. I know. A long pause. Her voice, when it came back, was different, smaller than I'd ever heard it. I didn't raise you well.
No.
I wanted a son who was a doctor, and I wanted it so much I couldn't see the daughter I already had. Your father said. She stopped. He said I turned you into a ghost in my own house. He said that last Tuesday. In 30 years he's never said something that long to me at once. I laughed once. A small laugh. It surprised us both.
Mom.
Say it once. We'll say it again next Sunday.
She cried.
I didn't. I stirred my coffee. I listened for 9 minutes. I let her. I love you, Beverly. I know. You don't have to prove it today. You'll have a lot of chances to prove it. I'll take all of them. Okay. We hung up. My father called me separately, A week later, between meetings.
Beverly.
I knew something was wrong for about 2 years. I didn't know what. I was afraid to look. Dad, I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking if I can see you alone next time I'm in Ohio. I moved to my office window. The harbor was the color of unpolished silver. A small sailboat cut across it, its white triangle brilliant against the gray. Yes, he said. Coffee. Just us. I'd like that very much. Silence. I could hear him breathing. The small hitch in his breath he'd had since a bout of pneumonia in his 30s, before I was born. I'm proud of you, Beverly. He said it simply, like it had been waiting for a long time to come out. I should have said it a long time ago. I'm saying it now. I'm going to keep saying it until you believe it.
I didn't know what to say.
I had waited for those words so long that when they finally arrived, their shape didn't match the shape of the waiting.
Thank you, Dad.
I love you. I love you too. We hung up. I took the rest of the afternoon off. The first afternoon I'd taken off in years without a meeting to reschedule or a vacation to justify. I set up a fiduciary trust for my parents that summer. $5,000 a month, paid directly to them, managed by a local firm I had vetted myself. No joint accounts. No authorized signatories. No one named Michael in any line of any document. My mother, to her credit, learned to read a bank statement. She asked the trustee to explain the first one twice. The second time, she took notes. I drive to my parents' city every 2 months. I stay 2 nights. I don't have dinner at the house if Michael is there. My mother has learned not to mention his name when I'm present, not out of anger toward him, but out of respect for me. She had never learned that word with me before.
She is learning it now.
My brother sent me a handwritten letter 8 months after the gala. 3 pages. I read the first paragraph, folded it, and put it in a drawer. I haven't read the rest. Maybe someday I will. Maybe I won't. I'm not in a hurry. There are things in that letter I'll need to be ready for, and I have learned, finally, not to walk into rooms before I'm prepared. 1 year after the gala, I stood in front of the cardiac pavilion with my mother. The plaque was on the north wall. 3 names in dark stone. My father's name. My mother's name.
Mine.
She read them aloud. All 3. When she got to mine, the last one, she let it hang in the air. I let her. For most of my life, I had thought my family needed me to be patient. Patient, quiet, reliable, never asking for the acknowledgement I had earned. But my family didn't need me to be patient.
My family needed me to be honest.
I had thought silence was courtesy. But silence, practiced long enough, becomes consent, a slow, quiet yes to every small cruelty that slides across the table between the gravy and the green beans. I wasn't the reliable daughter anymore. I was the honest one. And it turned out those were not the same thing at all. Every morning, now I drink my coffee before I answer my phone. It's a small rule. I made it the week after the gala. Phone face down on the counter, coffee first. Whatever the phone has for me, my mother, Elena, Lauren sending a photograph of her daughter on a swing set, it can wait 8 minutes. 8 minutes is not very long. It is enough. I have a kitchen with a window that faces east. In May the light comes in gold. In November it comes in silver. The mug I use is the same heavy white one I've had for 11 years. The spoon has a small rose on the handle. It was my grandmother's, and my mother had wanted it once, and it came to me instead. I'm still 39. In a few months, I'll be 40. I'm not afraid of it. I've already done the hardest thing I will ever do in this family, and the coffee is still warm. Nobody is going to come and tell you you've done enough. Nobody is going to hand you the microphone. You're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to smooth the dress. You're going to have to walk to the front of a room full of people and say the true thing in a clear voice and let what happens next happen. I did it on a Saturday in April. You can do it on a Tuesday, a Thursday morning, any day the coffee is hot and the folder is ready. The reliable one in the family never gets thanked on time. Sometimes they get thanked late. And if they're honest with themselves, finally, honestly honest, they learn to thank themselves first. That's the only gratitude that was ever going to arrive when it was supposed to.